Girl, the devil is a lie. Stay the hell away from that boy. He's gonna be out here wanting Abel's reward with Cain's sacrifice. I'd prefer that you stay away from Adam and Eve's offspring, because Adam was a damn fool and Eve liked to talk to snakes. This is Bedtime Stories, Grown-Up Edition, Genesis, Part 2. When we left off, Saint had met a beautiful woman named Tori at the jazz spot in Fort Worth. The date went so well that they'd planned another. But at the end of the night, Saint was wondering who exactly Tori was. Around that same time, Sincere was preparing for his first date with Natalia Jimenez, the customer service manager at Vibrantly You. He knew that she was connected, but as the front runner for Kingpin of the St. James family, he was not supposed to be running all around out in the public all willy-nilly. So in order to take her out on an ice cream date at 1 o'clock on Sunday, he was going to need to find out as much about her in advance as he could, and he was going to have his security all lined up. And Angela was holding back when Big Wood asked her about what exactly was going on at her estate in Denver. What neither of them knew was True was in a fight for her life. She'd already taken out one man in her bedroom in the main house. Based on her calculations, there was only one place that Bosch could be if he was still alive. The panic room that was behind the studies on the main level of the house. There were only two ways to get there: from the main corridor of the house or from a hidden passageway in the bedroom that she'd been staying in. After taking out the intruder in that bedroom, she cleared the bathroom, the walk-in closet, and then she heard a sound coming from the adjacent room that had been set up like a medical facility for her prenatal visits. Before she could get to that hidden passageway, a man came in from the adjacent room. The power was out in the house and the emergency generator had not kicked in. Thankfully, True was prepared. She was wearing night vision goggles. Unfortunately for the intruder, he was not. He was relying on the light that was emitting from the scope, attached to the semi-automatic weapon that he was pointing, aiming, and sweeping around the room. True squatted down as low as she possibly could, considering she was 29 weeks pregnant. She needed to prevent being seen, and she also needed to prevent being blinded by the light emitting from that scope. It only took True a few seconds to realize that it was her and intruder number 2. There was no one else in the adjacent room. So before she could be spotted, she raised her silenced 9mm pistol, aimed, and fired. And the intruder went down like a brick in the pool. And on his way down, True let off a second shot for good measure. She found the access point that led to the hidden door in the wall, slid it open, and quickly entered the passageway. When she left the underground bunker, she was prepared for a gunfight. She was covered in a bulletproof vest, armed with multiple firearms, flash bombs, a knife, and enough ammunition to take out 50 men. It was nothing but the grace of God that she only had to take out 2. She said a silent prayer that her instincts were right. Based on all the evidence, she believed that Bosch had gone the opposite direction, potentially leading any other intruder down the main hallway, near the other bedrooms on the main floor, the sitting rooms, and the study. In order to get to the panic room himself, Bosch would have needed to enter one of the 2 studies, find a similarly hidden doorway, and proceed down the passageway in the opposite direction. Prayerfully, he'd been able to do so without being followed, and he'd been able to close the hidden door behind himself. All True could do was hope and pray that she'd spot Bosch before he spotted her and took a shot. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Sincere was perplexed. He said to the general who he'd tasked to find out everything he could about Natalia Jimenez, "What the hell you mean you can't find any trace of her? She's got to live either in Dallas or in the surrounding area." The general said, "That's probably likely. But if I understand correctly, Mrs. St. James provides the lodging for her higher-ups. It's all a part of a plan that she orchestrated with her Uncle Manny. After that whole situation with Jira, she couldn't take any chances with her legitimate business being infiltrated or her staff being targeted." Sincere said, "Well, I guess that was smart, but when I talked to Q, he said I needed to find out as much as I could about her background, where she lives, property she owns, her family, other relationships." The general said, "Of course, I understand that, but unfortunately, she doesn't have any bills in her name. She doesn't have an economic footprint. It's like she's a ghost. I did find that there's a file on her in the St. James server, but it's sealed and it requires 2 passwords." Sincere said, "And who got the passwords?" The general said, "Q and Manny." Sincere said, "And I can't get access to it?" The general said, "No, it's a head thing. Every organization has files on their servers that are sealed, and usually they require the password of the head of that organization. And if information contained in that file is connected to another organization, then it requires the password of the head of that organization too. Sincere said, I knew she was connected, but that's ridiculous. Who the hell is this girl? The general said, it might not be her. It might be her people's. A family member, a close friend, a husband, an ex. Sincere said, a husband? The general said, it's possible, but I don't think Mrs. St. James would try to hook you up with a married woman. Sincere said, then what the hell am I supposed to do? The general said, you're supposed to find out all the information the old-fashioned way. Get to know her. Sincere said, well, how am I supposed to go on a date with her in broad daylight and in a public place? The general said, well, we'll handle all that. Then he ran down all the signals that Sincere needed to be aware of to know where his security was strategically placed, the signs that he needed to give if for some reason he thought he was in trouble. And then the general said, we'll be watching all the traffic around the ice cream spot. We'll know what she's driving, and we'll be able to get intel on the vehicle that'll probably include the address where it's registered. But you need to be prepared for the fact that if this woman is living this incognito, she may not even drive to the spot. She might get a ride or use a ride share. That'll make the whole situation a little more complicated. Either way, when she leaves there, we'll be tailing her. Can I give you some real talk? Sincere said, shoot. The general said, you plan to be the head of the St. James family. If you choose wisely, you'll have a competent right hand. You still have a whole lot to learn. No matter how this situation works out with old girl, look at this as an opportunity to hone your skills of observation, your intuition, your ability to extract information from people, to extrapolate details from the information that they share, no matter how limited. You're going to have to be 10 steps ahead of the people that you come in contact with. And there will be times when technology and resources are insufficient to get you the information that you need. On one hand, you have to be able to rely on your team, your soldiers, lieutenants, and generals. But on the other hand, you got to be the show. And Twin, Killer Q, and Big Wood can only teach you so much. You either got it or you don't. Sincere said, nigga, I got it. The general said, be easy. I'm just sharing what I know. Sincere said, good looking out. Then he hung up the phone. Realizing that everything his general said was the truth, he decided he'd go to bed. He needed to get up early in the morning, despite the fact that his date wasn't until 1 p.m. because he planned to dress to impress. And it didn't matter that the date was only to get ice cream. He was hoping that if he played his cards right, he'd be able to parlay ice cream into dinner and dinner into something else. He'd never had a hard time getting a woman in his bed. And while the goal was for him to find a wife, his plan was to be himself. She was either going to like what he was working with or she wasn't. And he wasn't the 90-day probation, waiting for a committed relationship, or abstaining until marriage kind of dude. If he saw something he liked, he had to have it. And if a woman wasn't giving it up, he wasn't wasting his time. Too bad for Sincere, he still didn't get it. Natalia was not that kind of woman. And she wasn't going to play 90-day probation games or send him on a scavenger hunt to get in her drawers. If what she could do in the bedroom was more important than who she was, then he was wasting his damn time. While Sincere was dozing off, imagining what Natalia would be like in bed, True was creeping down the hidden passageway in the main house on Angela and Stephanie's estate in Denver, Colorado. She'd reviewed the secure floor plans for the property, so she knew about where she could find the panic room. What she wasn't aware of was the fact that the panic room had an additional door once you made entry into the hidden passageway. When she found the door and found it closed, she was relieved. That meant she could announce her entrance and therefore avoid friendly fire. She was aware of the fact that the panic room was soundproof, so she wasn't surprised by the fact that she couldn't hear any sounds coming from it. But she had no clue whether she could be heard from inside. She entered the code that unsealed the water, fire, and bulletproof door, and as the door slid open, she said, Bosh, you in there? And she breathed a sigh of relief when she heard a voice say in return, yeah. She sped through the door, closed it behind her, and with her night vision goggles in place, she scanned the room. With the power out to the main house, there was no power in the panic room. But she was able to spot Bosh, curled up on the floor, and she immediately knew he was in trouble. She found the supply cabinet, opened it up, found the flashlight and the first aid kit. She removed the night vision goggles and powered on the flashlight. She grabbed a satellite phone and rushed over to where Bosh was. She powered on the fully charged satellite phone and bypassed all the numbers that were stored in the speed dial. She put in Angela's number that she knew by heart. And when Angela answered, she said, Bosh and I are together, but he's been shot. We're in the panic room in the main house and we need help. Angela said, all right, True, hold on. I'm going to patch LJ in on the call. True put the phone on speaker and sat it down on the floor, and then she started examining Bosh. He was conscious, alert, and in a whole lot of pain. When he'd left her in the underground bunker to go back into the main house and grab their 2 oversized duffels, he suited up in a bulletproof vest and took several guns with him. As True began cutting him out of his clothes, LJ came on the line saying, True, you good? True said, I'm fine, but Bosh is not. I count 1, 2, 4 bullet wounds, but none of them appear to be fatal. He's lost a lot of blood, though. I'm going to try and patch him up, but we need help in here. LJ said, we got teams on the way. I need you to do the best that you can, because you got about an hour and a half before anybody gets there. And we need to be able to see on that property, because the last thing I want to do is send them in blind, and then they need to be rescued. As soon as you have Bosh in a good position, I'm going to need you to get on that computer that's in that storage cabinet so I can remote in. As True listened to LJ, she did her best to patch Bosh up. The first aid kit was severely insufficient. He needed a tourniquet for his leg, one for his arm, but thankfully several of the gunshot wounds appeared to be flesh wounds. He'd taken several bullets to the back. Thank God he was wearing a vest. But True was going to need to use the limited amount of saline there to flush the wounds and her shirt as a tourniquet for his leg and arm, and to apply firm and steady pressure to the flesh wounds that she was going to cover with gauze. She removed her vest, and as she started removing her shirt, Bosh showed that he was still with it. He said, hold up, what you doing? True said, it's no tourniquet in this first aid kit. I'm going to have to use my shirt. As she pulled the shirt over her head, Bosh averted his eyes. True said, nigga, cut it out. I know you seen titties before. Bosh chuckled, and True said, you need to talk to me, because you lost a whole lot of blood. And the last thing I need is you losing consciousness in here. You entirely too big for me to carry you out of here. And how in the hell you supposed to protect me all shot up? Bosh said, I'm shot up because I was protecting you. True said, well, what you want, a damn cookie? Stay your behind awake and we'll get you some. Bosh said, you got jokes. This is not the time. True said, oh, it's the time. I'm going to say and do whatever I need to keep you with me. Bosh said, be careful with your words. Don't say you're going to do anything. On the other end of the phone, LJ gritted his teeth and shook his head. Bosh and True sound entirely too friendly for his liking, and he did not want to believe that full of bullets, Bosh was flirting with True. And Angela, who was still on the line, cleared her throat and said, how are things looking, True? Because she did not want LJ to overhear the wrong thing. Q had told her all about Big Wood's plan to get better and pull up on True and Bosh and see exactly what they'd been up to while they thought he was dead. And while she wouldn't tell Q if she overheard any funny business, she knew good and darn well that LJ would. True said, I'm going to need a couple more minutes, and then I'll be able to get on that computer. Meanwhile, in Texas, Natalia was having a hard time falling asleep. She didn't want to cancel her date with Sincere, but she really didn't want to go at that point either. After her conversation with Catherine, she had some questions about who Sincere was and what he was about. Obviously, she knew that he was a St. James. Nigel was his father and Catherine was his stepmother, but she didn't know who his mother was, what his role was in the St. James organization, or what position he was trying to secure. Her father was a general in the Lopez organization, and while he didn't keep what he did for a living a secret from her mother, Eugenia, her sister Courtney, or from her, she was not privy to the intricate details or the inner working of the Lopez organization or any of the other organizations in the Five Families. She was aware of who the key players were, though, since she was sworn to secrecy and it wasn't any of her business. She never made mention of what she did know about the Five Families. She knew enough about protocol to know that if Sincere was vying for a position that required he find a wife, then that position had to be pretty high on the totem pole. And since she knew that Angela was working diligently to reorganize and rebrand the Five Families, she wasn't quite sure what position he was vying for, considering the fact that his cousin, Angela's husband Q, was already the kingpin. So she done what any woman in her position would do. She called her daddy, and her daddy was none too pleased. He said, baby girl, what interest do you have in the illegitimate secret offspring of Nigel St. James? Natalia said, illegitimate secret? What? Her father said, rumor has it that Nigel was a Rolling Stone. He had several children with a put-up in Miami. He thought Twin knew nothing about it. Natalia said, Twin? Her father said, yeah, that's what they call Catherine, his widow. Listen, it's complicated and it's really none of your business. But I need to know why you want to know. Natalia said, well, Mrs. St. James, Miss Angela introduced me to him, and his stepmother, Catherine, I met her tonight. They both seem to think that it's a good idea that he and I get to know one another. Apparently, they want him to find a wife, and they think I'm a good candidate. Nate Jimenez, Natalia's father, said, girl, the devil is a lie. Stay the hell away from that boy. Natalia said, Daddy, are you just being overprotective, or do you know something that I don't? Nate said, I know the boy's daddy. That's all I need to know. I'm in the life, so I can't really have a problem with you dating somebody that's in the life, as long as they on the up and they playing for the right team. But I can just about guarantee that if that boy's in league for a position that's high enough that requires him to have a wife, he's going to be out here wanting Abel's reward with Cain's sacrifice. Natalia said, and what does that mean exactly? Nate said, it means he's going to want all the glory without any of the guts. You said the boy is around your age, right? When Natalia said yes, her father said, when they try to inherit the throne at such a young age, they have a tendency to be spoiled brats, privileged beyond belief, and entitled as hell. The boy probably ain't had to work for nothing a day in his damn life. I ain't never told you to give people a chance or the benefit of the doubt. I'd prefer if you're not waste a whole bunch of time letting people show you why you should avoid them. They ain't make all them old sayings for nothing. Birds of a feather flock together and like father, like son. The boy's daddy was killed because he had a habit of operating outside the bounds of his position and the boundaries that the families have in place to keep people in that position safe. All so he could get in some women's drawers. Don't end up Abel's reward in Cain's hands. Natalia said, well, what you want me to do? Pick Abel? Because he ended up dead. Nate said, I'd prefer that you stay away from Adam and Eve's offspring. Because Adam was a damn fool and Eve liked to talk to snakes. As Natalia reminisced on her conversation with her father, all she could do was chuckle. When the conversation ended, she told him, well, Daddy, I will keep all of that in mind, but I would hate somebody to judge me based on the decisions that you've made in your life. Nate said, now what the hell is that supposed to mean? I'm an honorable man, and I've always treated women the way I'd want somebody to treat my daughters. Now, I'd expect something like that from your sister, because she's a live wire. But I can't believe you'd say something like that. Natalia said, I mean no disrespect, Daddy, but I'm sure you've done things that I know nothing about. Things that you're not proud of. And I'm sure that there's somebody somewhere in this world who knows all about it. You've gone through extensive efforts to keep me safe from retribution associated with those choices. You've taught me everything I know about how to keep myself safe too. Not just because this is a cold, dark world with snakes that like to talk to women, but because you know you got dirt under your own fingernails. And you know what they say about the sins of the fathers. Nate said, now that's a low blow. But I'm with you when you're right. How about this? You keep your ears and your eyes open. Stay on your P's and Q's, dot your I's, cross your T's, and don't let that nigga have to tell you more than once who he is. When people show you who they are, believe them. Natalia said, Daddy, you ain't ran out of cliches yet. Nate said, no, I got one more. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Natalia said, now that, you know you don't have to tell me. I actually met a guy yesterday that reminds me so much of you. Nate asked, you do a background check? Natalia said, I'm in the process. Nate said, yeah, your sister met a man too. As a matter of fact, she already done been on one date with him and planning on going with another one. Can you believe it? Natalia said, yes, Daddy. She called me and told me all about it. Nate said, well, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told her when she told me about it. Don't get all caught up in what the man looked like, what kind of car he drive, and how much money he got in his bank account. The most important thing that you can find out about a man is whether he can keep you safe. As Natalia thought about that last statement from her father, she drifted off to sleep. She had no idea how this date with Sincere was going to go, but she certainly hoped that whatever his role in the St. James organization was and whatever role he was trying to get, he had the ability to keep her safe.